Hey guys, it's Lewis from Recycle Bicycle Sales here. These two mountain bikes are 8 years and $2,000 apart. Let's have a closer look and see why that's the case. First thing I'm going to say here is that both of these bikes are quite comparable. They're both an aluminium frame and they've both got relatively comparable suspension just from two different year models. This is the 2016 Giant Rain 2. When this bike was brand new, it was worth about $4,000. Now in the pre-owned market as a second-hand bike, it's worth about $2,000. It has RockShox air sprung suspension. It has a Shimano SLX drivetrain, of which actually has two chainrings on the front, so it's a double chainring system. It's got 27.5-inch wheels and a relatively long suspension travel. So this is kind of like what we would call like an enduro bike. It's also got hydraulic Shimano disc brakes as well. When we look across at this Orbea here, it's quite comparable to the Giant. It also has the aluminium frame, but it has 29-inch wheels, so slightly bigger wheels than what come on the Giant. It also has the Shimano drivetrain here, but instead of having two chainrings on the front and 10 on the back like the Giant, this one has 1 on the front and 12 on the back. So less gears, but a similar ratio of gears. This is the way that mountain bikes tend to be trending across to the single chainring on the front. That's probably the biggest difference we're going to see between older mountain bikes and newer mountain bikes, is the drivetrain setup, I suppose. This particular example has Fox air sprung suspension as well. I'd argue quite comparable to the RockShox that we had over there. Brand new, this bike is worth about $6,600, but we currently have it listed at a pre-owned price at $4,000 even. If we take a closer look at the frames, we can see that both of these ones are actually aluminium. The quickest way to be able to tell if it's aluminium is if we have a closer look at the frame, you'll usually see some welding marks at the joins between the different sort of sections of frame. So aluminium frame. If we look across at this more sort of recent Orbea, it still is an aluminium frame, but they've kind of hidden the welds quite well. They've polished over the top, but I can see some sneaky little welds down here where the frame all joins together. So still an aluminium frame. So these two frames are very comparable. Honestly, not a huge difference between the two of them. So I'm going to call this one a draw. Let's take a closer look down at the drivetrain, at the gears. On this Giant here, it has two chainrings on the front, and it has 10 cogs on the back. So that means that we have 20 gears total. Whereas when we move across to this Orbea here, it's the 1x system, so single chainring on the front and 12 on the back. 12 gears total, 20 and 12. This has more gears, but this has a wider ratio of gears. So kind of a muchness, but a lot of people tend to upgrade to the single chainring because then they can have a stiffer rear derailleur, so the chain's not going to bounce around as much. It's kind of like, I would argue, probably one of the most common upgrades that most people do on their mountain bikes, on their older style mountain bikes at least. So let's jump outside and do a quick gearing test between these two bikes. I want to have a quick test of the gears. I'm just going to go for a lap up and back, have a little play around up and down, shifting aggressively, shifting smoothly. I'm just going to play around with it. I don't really have anything specific that I'm testing here, but I'll try both bikes back to back. We'll start with the Orbea. This thing's pretty good. Even trying to shift under load there, I was putting a lot of power through the bike and still shifting gear, and it dropped straight in exactly when I wanted it to. So I'd say that feels pretty damn smooth. Let's try the Giant. Am I allowed to say that it felt quite similar? I guess I can, because I think it did. Even shifting under load as I was coming just back then, pedaling quite hard, hit a gear, and it was straight in each time, which is pretty cool. So the gear shifting felt quite good. I think the big thing that they talk about with the gearing on these like older style of bikes is how much the chain can bounce around, although it's kind of cancelled out with this one because it has a clutch system here. If that was off, the chain bounces a little bit more than if it was on. So am I allowed to say that they're the same? Maybe not the same, but that one's not 1,000 times better than what this is. But a cool thing that this one has is a double chainring. So when you come to a really steep hill, you can drop down to the small chainring and make it a little bit easier to get up that cliff you're trying to ride back up. So I'm going to call these gears a draw as well. I know there's going to be plenty of people in the comment section that are going to hate me for it, but that didn't feel 1,000 times better than this, so I'm calling it a draw. Now let's talk about brakes. On both of these bikes, they actually both happen to have the exact same Shimano brake. This one is newer though, but they're both the exact same Shimano brake. by the exact same, I mean, they're both just the 2-piston caliper, front and rear. Sometimes if you buy one of these fancy mountain bikes, you might have a 4-piston brake caliper. Bit more powerful, slightly larger brake pad, more surface area on the brake pad, I suppose, so a little bit more powerful. On both of these bikes, dude, it's literally a draw. They're literally the exact same brake. It's not like one is the XT level and one's the SLX level or anything. They're both just Shimano brakes. So not only are they very comparable, they're identical. If we look a little bit closer down to the brake rotors, this older style of bike has a 6-bolt brake rotor and the newer style of bike has a center lock brake rotor. I don't think one's necessarily better than the other, but center lock tends to be the way that most bikes come these days. I'm gonna try a brake test now. We'll try front brake, back brake, both brakes. I'll try the other bike. Again, I don't really know what I'm looking for here. I'm just gonna try a few different things and see what stands out. I'm gonna go for a ride. Let me go around you. Oh yeah. I don't really know where I'm going, but see, that's a pretty powerful brake. That's a very powerful brake. I'm quite happy with that. Even doing a wheelie, I was able to sort of like bounce off the back brake quite well. I like that. And I'm gonna make the assumption, because these two both have the same brake, hopefully this one feels the same. I'll give it a try. I'll be right back. Ugh. There we go. Feels the same. Sounds the same, more or less. They were both like 1-finger brake. I wasn't using 2, so that's a good sign. Again, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but they both felt the same. That was a pretty boring comparison. I'm sorry for that, but I guess these older style bikes are not bad by any means. So I guess that's what we're finding in this video, really. If we look at just the miscellaneous, the sort of random little bits there, they both have a dropper seat post, so they're the same. They both have literally the same Shorby tires, so they're the same. They both have a suspension lockout, so that's the same. They're honestly very comparable, these two bikes actually. It's just an older style and a newer style. The Giant, since it has the double chainring on the front, it also has a chain guide down here, which is gonna help prevent the chain from falling off. Whereas this One-By system doesn't need that because it's got the narrow wide chainring, which is just one of the latest and greatest things that have come out on mountain bikes. If we wanted to go a little bit deeper again, I could say that the Orbea does not have a bash guard down the front, whereas the Giant does. So if you were to perhaps try and jump over a log and not quite make it all the way and hit the frame there, that one's gonna handle it a little bit better. But at the end of the day, I'm really trying to split hairs here. There's not a huge difference between the two. I'll also say, since this bike's a little bit older, it means that it's had a few more years worth of riding, which also just means that it's a little bit more used. So the condition of this one is perhaps not quite as pristine as one of the latest and greatest toys. The last thing I want to check before going outside and do a handling test is weight. Now these two are both a large frame size, so it's a pretty fair comparison. I'm gonna go grab the scales, I'll be right back. All right, let's start with the Orbea. I have no idea what this is gonna weigh or what the difference might be, but let's find out. 14.3-ish. Okay, all right, we can work with that. Now let's have a look at the Giant. I'm interested to see what it says here because this has pedals on it. So we'll see. 14.7, okay, tiny little bit heavier. Well, that's not as bad as I thought it would be, to be honest. I thought there'd be more of a difference with the older style bike. If you take into account the pedals that are on the Giant and not on the Orbea, I guess they're pretty even. Now, let's jump outside and do a quick handling test. All right, let's try a quick little handling test. I think this one's gonna be a difficult one to prove here in a car park. It's probably easier out on the trails, but for the purpose of this test, I'm just gonna try doing some figure eights and see which one feels easier to control. For what it's worth, we're comparing a 29-inch wheel with a 27.5-inch wheel. We're also comparing a, 130 mil travel, I think it is, with 160. So that's a bit more of like a, big jumps, enduro sort of bike. This one is what they more call like an aggressive cross-country bike or a trail bike or something like that. So I would like to assume that this one's probably easier to control because it'll have a bit of a steeper head angle rather than a slack one like the enduro bike. But if it's anything like the other tests we've done, maybe they'll be exactly the same again. Well, let's give it a try. I don't really Seems to turn okay. I think that feels nice. I'm gonna try the Giant. Just gonna do the same thing, I think. The tires feel and sound like grippier. And I think that's because these ones are a little bit more used, maybe. There's just more surface area. Tire pressure might be lower. These handlebars are definitely wider. That's something that I'm noticing. But that's pretty common on these enduro bikes, I think. I mean, I feel like I'm lower to the ground, like my center of gravity feels a bit lower. So that felt easier to do those little figure eights because I'm not like up here, I'm like a little bit lower, but much of a muchness. I'm just trying to find something that I can say that's different, but they both feel like a mountain bike to me. Well, would you look at that? I reckon they're pretty much the same sort of thing, which is not what I thought I was gonna say when we came up with the idea of filming this video. I definitely thought that as a salesperson, oh, you should buy the more expensive product because it's better and rah, rah, all this sort of stuff. But as we've just proven in this video, more money doesn't mean more better. So sometimes if you go for a pre-owned bike that's perhaps a little bit older and you save 2,000 bucks, you might even be able to wheelie it better. That was all I found in the test, is that that one was able to hold a wheelie better. I really don't have any good reason why that is. It might be softer suspension or fits me better or something like that, but braking felt the same, handling felt more or less the same, but I think I held the wheelie longer on that bike. I don't know, we can watch back in the video later, but I think that one, yeah, held the wheelie better. I'm sorry for such a boring video. I know this isn't what you were expecting when you clicked on this video, and it's not what I was expecting either when we started filming. But again, I'll say it one more time, more money doesn't mean more better. So sometimes you might be able to save a couple of bucks and buy the slightly older bike. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you disagree and think that there is a big difference between these two bikes, let us know in the comments below. Maybe there's a test that I should have done that I didn't get a chance to try. Let us know in the comments below as well. Otherwise, I'm gonna say thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next video. See ya.